Hey guys, Mike at SIG SAUER Academy here. We're going to quickly discuss mounting and leveling our scope. So here I have the scope, I have the scope mount and the hardware that comes with it. We already pre-leveled our rifle. We want to make sure before we start anything that we're working on a level surface. We pre-leveled this rifle on our tripod. First thing we're going to do is get our mount in place. So I know generally where I'm going to place this mount. This can be adjusted later on once we have our scope on and leveled. But I'm just going to get it in place and torqued to the proper spec. While I'm pressing forward on this mount, I'm going to tighten this down to finger tight. And then I can switch over to my torque limiter to get it to the proper torque spec. You can check your owner's manual to get the proper torque spec for your mount specifically. All right, so once we have our mount in place, it is level and we have it torqued to spec. Now we can work on getting our scope in place. So I'm gonna position my scope. Generally, we wanna be around the center of these tubes when we place it. And then I'm going to get my scope rings, the top scope rings, and get those in place. You're gonna notice sometimes the scope is gonna wanna tilt depending on which model you have and what mount you're using. So I'm gonna hold that in place as I get my screws prepared. So as I start getting screws in place, I'm not torquing these to anything in particular at the start. I'm just getting a couple threads started to hold the scope in place where I want it. So I just got that screw started and now my scope will stay in place for me. And I can still rotate that scope in the rings when I go to level. So again, just getting these screws started. You're gonna wanna check your owner's manual as far as Loctite is concerned. On these screws, we do recommend a small dab of blue Loctite to prevent the screws from backing out. All right guys, so now that I got all my screws in finger tight, you'll notice I'm still able to shift my scope in the rings left to right. I'm gonna ensure that my scope is mounted with the bore line. We're looking good there. And now I'm going to remove my top turret cap and I'll use my bubble level in order to ensure that I got this optic centered in the rings, level in the rings. It's important as I go through this torquing process that I remain level here. If I start to torque one side too much, it can pull that optic off to one side and we're gonna lose our level. So I'll leave that bubble there as we go through this process, make sure that I'm staying level all the way through. And when I go through this tightening process as well, I'm gonna go in a star pattern just like you would the lug nuts on your truck. And that again is gonna prevent us from shifting the optic one way or the other. So I'll use my torque limiter here. I'm gonna go around a couple times, again in that star pattern, so I'm preventing from pulling too far on one end at a time. And as I go through this, I'm gonna be constantly reevaluating my ring spacing as well. So if you can see the space between the rings, I want it consistent from one side to the other. So from left to right, I wanna make sure that my ring spacing is consistent as I go through here. So again, I'm not torquing yet. I'm just getting these a little bit tighter as I go through, making sure I maintain level in that star pattern. So I'm not feeling any real resistance yet on these screws. All right guys, so once I have these screws snug and I'm gonna start going into torquing, I do have my bubble level is still accurate. We're starting to lock down this optic, so now I can go into actually torquing the spec. So on our rings here, it tells me our torque spec. Our torque spec is gonna be 25 inch-pounds. So I'm going to use my torque limiter to get us there. Again, I don't want to just torque one all the way to 25. I want to go in that star pattern, so I'm incrementally making adjustments to avoid shifting the scope in the rings. All right, now I have all my screws torqued to the proper spec. We are still level left to right, so I'm happy with that. I'll get my turret cap back on. And now I'll start to consider my eye relief. So next piece here, I'm going to, I know that my scope is level in the mount, so I can remove the mount now and reinstall, working on my eye relief piece here. One thing to keep in mind when we're setting eye relief is think about the application of the rifle. If it's gonna be a dual use rifle where you're gonna be shooting in alternating positions, standing, prone, etc., I'd recommend setting your eye relief in the prone, because that's a position where you're not gonna be able to adjust your head position as easily as you can when you're standing with the rifle. For the purposes here, I'll set my stock to the desired length. I'll open up my lens caps, and I can get behind the rifle here to get the proper eye relief. And that's actually perfect where it is. If you start to see a consistent shadow around your ocular lens, then you're gonna wanna move this front to rear. And all you're gonna do for that is loosen up these bits on the back of the mount, and you can move one Picatinny rail forward or backwards, get it finger snug again. Again, we're not torquing it down yet, I'm just setting that eye relief. Get behind it. And if that works for me, I'm gonna loosen these up again. I'm gonna add that pressure forward as I go for my final mounting solution here. So a little pressure forward. Get that mount in place. I'll get my torque driver, my torque limiter. And now I can get to the proper spec here. Again, on some of these optics, your torque specs are gonna be printed on the hardware itself. On others, you may need to consult the owner's manual. But we wanna make sure we're getting to the proper torque specs to avoid damaging our equipment. So we're at our proper torque specs there. Next step is checking eye relief in alternate shooting positions. So I'll get in the prone with the rifle, I'll check my eye relief there. If I'm satisfied with it, I can witness mark with a paint marker all my screws on top with my rings, and also on my mount, so that I can see if any of my screws start to back off over time, and then we'll get to zeroing. See you on the next one.